Welcome back, everybody. It is a distinct honor to be with Dr. Matt Halpert here today from Immunoscene. This is going to be a very interesting conversation. Dr. Halpert will recall when I first met him, I was highly skeptical because for over 20 years of my career in the integrative oncology world, I've had patients fly all over the world to receive dendritic T cell vaccines. And frankly, I guess there's no nice way to put this. It's been very lackluster at best and dangerous at worst. And so it's just something that I've always really steered my patients away from, to consider something I was never trained in, and something that I just was hopeful. On paper, it seemed like a cool idea, but the reality was very different. And a lot of patients spent a lot of money and a lot of precious time doing therapies that did not have a lot of return of investment. So when I first learned about Dr. Halpert, I had a patient who basically asked for forgiveness later. He's like, I've done it, and now I want to tell you what I've done. And I was like, how dare did you do this? I was so upset. And yet my mind was blown, and continues to be for the other patients that I've learned along the way. So Dr. Halpert, thank you for being here and helping change other people's minds as you did mine, and helping us know what's in the future of this amazing, updated therapy. So welcome.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me and for keeping an open mind. I honestly don't disagree with anything you just said. And so I'm excited that I get to be so cutting edge as to re-educate the field as to what dendritic cells can truly do when used correctly.
I love it. I love it. Well, first of all, what the heck is a dendritic cell? Like, tell us about this therapy, because it has been around for a long time. People have probably heard about it. Maybe have even tried it. Tell the listener what a dendritic T cell therapy is all about.
Right, absolutely. So our immune system is designed to protect us from a ton of threats, right? Bacteria, viruses, and mutated cells that are going to become cancers. And so to do all of these different things, we have many different types of immune cells that are responsible for different components, different activities within our body. Dendritic cells were discovered in the 1970s, so we've known about them for a while. And it didn't take long for scientists to realize that they essentially sit atop the immune system pyramid. They are as we like to say, they are the generals of the immune system army. It is their job to see the threat, whatever that threat might be, including cancer, and then organize, digest, understand, and organize the proper and complete immune response needed to eliminate that threat. And so when you catch the flu, I can tell you with absolute certainty your dendritic cells become knowledgeable of the flu, of this virus. They understand what is needed to eliminate it. And then it tells the rest of your immune system, go do A, go do B, go do C. This is what you're looking for, and this is what you need to do. Your body gets rid of the virus, not 50% of the virus and leave behind a whole bunch, left, but to get rid of it completely and then resolve into immunological memory, which will further protect you. And so this is the job of the dendritic cell. It is the job to see the threat and respond to it. And, quite frankly, when you have a runaway infection or a runaway cancer, it is the fault of the dendritic cell more often than not. And we are suffering from something called immune ignorance, where your immune system has failed to activate correctly and is not doing its job.
I love this. I was kind of, the way I've always thought about the immune system, and you just really gave the story of this so beautifully, is that it's basically based on these 3 R's. So recognize, respond, and remember. And what you just described is that the T cells are really, the dendritic cells are very much in charge of that process. And what is happening today is this immune system evasion, this immune ignorance, and even T cell exhaustion is a word that I run, or a concept that I run across a lot, which is, maybe you could describe to the listener what is T cell exhaustion in this arena? Like, what does that mean typically to you?
Sure. So yes, absolutely. Immune exhaustion, T cell exhaustion is it is a problem, especially in cancer. And it is, as of 2024, it is something that scientists worldwide are working on still to overcome. So our immune system, very complex, very self-regulating. You do not want autoimmunity. That's not something that our bodies typically want. And so in the event of a prolonged fight, so we're not talking about eliminating a virus after 3 days. We're talking about maybe you have a tumor and maybe it's a pretty big, bulky tumor, and this is going to take months and months and months to actually eliminate. At some point, your T cells, which are the soldiers in the immune system army that are actually fighting and destroying the cancer cells, they start to, and I'm going to personalize them a bit here because they're cells, but they almost start to worry that maybe they are attacking the wrong thing. Maybe they have become autoimmune. Maybe there is, because why is this fight taking so long? And so they start to raise up certain receptors or proteins, which we have collectively called checkpoints. And they are effectively brakes on the immune cells. And they are saying, if I'm wrong, if I'm attacking the wrong thing, please turn me off. And unfortunately, many cancers have learned how to exploit this. And they see that and they turn it off. And so now, even if you had an immune response, the cancer has figured out how to turn it off, to become invisible again. And the term for this, as those immune cells now quiet down, is exhaustion, immune exhaustion. The good news is that, one, there are ways, a variety of ways, and I know you with the, all the integrative things out there, there's more than one way to help overcome this, to either block that exploitation of the cancer or to actually have the immune cells not express those markers. And something we've seen with dendritic cells used correctly is that the effector cells that spin off from them are much slower. I won't say nothing's 0%, nothing's 100%, but they are much slower to express those checkpoints. They last a lot longer. The term is durable immunological memory, as you were referring to there. And so we see that these cells actually persist longer and longer and longer. And we've published on this actually repeatedly in Science Translational Medicine and a variety of other publications about how important these effector cells are in our ability to overcome cancer. And so by using dendritic cells correctly, we see correct effector cells. And that's nothing to say about the dendritic cells, which can continue to persist in the lymph nodes and continually pump out more and more fresh effector cells to fight. And so all this works together to help push back, we'll say, or I don't want to say completely overcome, but push back the potential threat of immune exhaustion.
Amazing. And this is a perfect segue because you talk about this, you use the word the concept very carefully of when it's done correctly. So how do you and the Immunoscene team do this differently? All the way from like soup to nuts, as my grandma would say. How do you guys differ from the other offerings on the market?
Yep. So of course we get asked this a lot. And there have been other dendritic cell attempts, and there are currently other dendritic cell attempts, and potentially, to an immunologist such as myself, the differences are very in my face, but to my mom, who is not, they all look the same. So we are trying to get better at how do we truly explain the differentiator. So here's what I'm going to try to say, right? We know dendritic cells can do the job. If you have survived up to this point, if you are alive right now, listening to this interview, then your dendritic cells have functioned correctly. And that includes, again, viruses or, whatever else, including microcancers. Very often, there is a mutation and one cell will become two, and instead of stopping, two becomes four, four becomes eight, and so on. Something is wrong. And if it's not fixed inside those cells, it is now up to your immune system to eliminate it. That is its job. And it has done that successfully. So we know it can do it. And we knew that in the 1980s and the 1990s, we know it. And so there was, and there have been big pushes to, okay, if we're going to use your own immune system to overcome cancer, let's go to the top. Biology says it's through the dendritic cell. So let's get that to work. And so collectively, this is of course many years ago now, but people get, okay, we've got them, we've got dendritic cells. What do we do? How do we educate them to see the cancer and then tell the immune system what to do? And so people have tried many, many things. They said, well, let's take some of the cancer and chop it up into what is called a lysate. And let's throw the lysate onto the dendritic cell. The dendritic cells will eat that and then present it to the effector cells, and the effector cells will go fight. And you know what? If you can see my graph, sure, there's something. I'm not going to say that does nothing, but it's underwhelming, and people were, okay, that wasn't great. And people have tried, well, what if we use specific cancer peptides or specific proteins and throw it on the dendritic cell? The dendritic cell eats it, presents it, the effector cells go, and okay, I mean, it's still underwhelming. Others said, well, maybe we need to get the cancer information inside the dendritic cell. And so that leads us to use cancer genetic information, DNA, RNA, and let's put that inside the dendritic cell. Those cancer markers will be actually made in the cell now, chopped up, processed. The dendritic cell will present to the effector cells. The effector cells will go do their job. And okay, again, an underwhelming response. And this was unfortunately just repeated failures where we're just not, we know it's the right cell, but we're seeing minimal improvement in the clinic. And people just could not figure out what's missing. We're missing something. And as a result, of course, many in the field, a lot of money and interest said we have to move on. We can't just sit here at dendritic cells. Let's move on to other places in the immune system we could hijack. And this leads to CAR T cell therapy, checkpoint inhibitor therapy, things that have a role or a spot, but by nature, they're artificial. I mean, you're now not using the dendritic cell, so you're admitting we're not going to have an optimal immune response. We're probably going to have to target a single antigen. Because we can't use the dendritic cell, we can't target many antigens. We can't get all the signals. Again, not that there's nothing there, but that you just have to accept that you're missing a lot of important pieces, including black boxes that we still don't know as of today.
Nice. Yeah.
So let me make it sound even more depressing. Was then a lot of people said, okay, well, we're going to stick with dendritic cells. And now here's one thing that bothers me. I still see groups out there that continue to tout using dendritic cells with cancer lysate as if it's new, or we use cancer mRNA as if it's new. And that's, their marketing team maybe does a great job, but it's not new. That was tried. That doesn't work. We know it doesn't.
Yeah.
And it's almost, I have moral quandaries with groups that continue to just propose the same thing as though, why do you think it's going to work, right? Definition of insanity. That didn't work before, it's not going to work now. Some groups have said, well, we have to try something else. I mean, we've got to get them to go. So we'll throw the cancer lysate on, but what else? What else can we do? And, hey, they respond to the flu. Let's throw flu virus at them. And when they respond to the virus, maybe they'll respond some to the cancer. Or let's use Coley's toxins or bacteria or BCG or something. And honestly, some of those do hit pathways that are involved in the process. And maybe it goes from this to this. Maybe there is an improved response. I'm certainly not going to say that there's just absolutely nothing to adding these other signals. There can be.
Right.
Still not doing the complete job. We still know that. And if you think about it, we're still within the realm of artificial stuff. Cancer is not the flu. Cancer is not bacteria. If your body's eliminated cancers before, it does not need to see bacterial signals to do the job. It still doesn't make sense when you get down to the brass tacks. And so all this to say, we've moved forward in time from the 1970s to, around 2005, 2006, when our group, my research group in the Texas Medical Center, continued to work with dendritic cells and said, we're not doing any of that. We are missing a signal. We are missing a mechanism. That's just, at the end of the day, that's what's missing. And one of the only times I'll sound arrogant is to say, we found it. And so I'm going to explain it here. And from a eagle eye view, it's going to sound very simplistic. It is more complex than this, but here it is. You've got groups adding cancer lysate on the outside of the dendritic cell, which then is engulfed and put through a pathway. You have groups trying to put cancer mRNA inside the cell, which is processed and put into a different pathway. Has anybody tried to do both? And I know that sounds, you're thinking, no, that's not that big of a deal. Well, we tried that. And maybe we're thinking 1 + 1 will equal 2. Or maybe we're thinking, but maybe 1 + 1 will equal 3. Let's find out. Maybe there's something there. And when we did that, we saw 1 + 1, it did not equal 2. It did not equal 3. It equaled 9,450. It went off the chart.
Wow.
In a way where this is not additive. This is not just because we added more stuff. Clearly, we flipped a switch.
Yeah.
Yeah, the dendritic cell is responding. It's not just accepting the material and presenting it. It is recognizing something here and changing its whole behavior.
Cool.
And so the more we get into the nuts and bolts of it, the cancer, if you can see my hand here, the cancer information put on outside the dendritic cell is eaten and is being processed on the way in. The same material put on the inside of the dendritic cell and presented on the way out, there is a moment in time where there's actually a giant mechanism here looking to see, do I see the same stuff outside in and inside out? And if it's at all different, this doesn't happen. But if it's there simultaneously and overlapped completely, it is that fine-tuned. The dendritic cell says, all right, game on. This is the threat. This is what we needed to see first to do a response. And I'm telling you, we have done the work. We have studied mechanism. We have published a variety of peer review papers in different science and medical journals, where even if this is off by just a smidge, it doesn't work. And if you actually restore the match, it does.
Interesting.
Biology does not, this is not a fluke. A massive amount of energy goes into regulating this pathway. It is so fine-tuned and results in such powerful movement where when we see 1 + 1 equals some gigantic number, it makes us relook at every graph that we've looked at before. We're looking here at, is something 1x or 1.5x or 2x? If the dendritic cells can do 154x, why are we even looking at 2x is nothing. That's baseline.
Right.
It's not a surprise all other dendritic cell treatments have failed. None of them have activated this pathway. This pathway leads to a massive reorganization of the genetic transcriptome of the dendritic cells. And it's all natural. No drug, no toxin.
Just the person.
Information itself. And I know I talk too much, but it is such an
beautiful
finding that when we find that the immune system can respond so robustly to something that seems so simple, well, all biological things we understand seem simple after we understand it. And so when we see that, it made us all back up and go, oh my gosh. It's not a surprise that these have not worked before. No one's done it. It has to be basically the first step. And if you don't do it, I don't care what else you add. I don't care what else you do. Look, we can have a race and you can have a race. If you're not on the right track in the first place, you're not winning. You've got to be on the right track. Are there other things you could do? Add this, do this, change this? Maybe. But if you don't start from this fundamentally critical aspect to how the immune system operates, you're playing with half a deck. I mean, you're just not going, it's not likely you're going to get there. You've got to have this we call double loading. It is too impactful to ignore. And so, nothing I've said is even remotely specific to what the target is. I didn't say it's a specific cancer or a specific tissue.
It's terrain centric, truly. I mean, that's my, it's like it's reestablishing those 3 R's.
Yes.
The body does what it inherently was meant to do.
Yep, that's
Interesting.
all we do. We use biology to fix biology.
No, I love
And
it. Yeah,
it's, and it is in a sense that simple. Obviously, what we do in the lab to enforce that to happen and reintroduce that is more complex,
right.
but conceptually,
Yeah.
it is surprisingly simplistic. And typically, when we present the data to either our scientific peers, or even to the FDA, they kind of have this light bulb moment themselves where they say, "Oh my gosh, like this is actually going to change
Yeah.
how we can integrate immunotherapy into our clinical practice." And so, science and medicine, as you know, take time. It takes time for
Yeah.
paradigm shifts,
Absolutely.
especially if what you're proposing is anti-dogmatic.
Right.
But it is it's extremely important, which is why we must push it forward. We must get it into the clinic. It cannot be a discovery that goes
Right. Just an
uh,
intellectual exercise. It is not. Yeah. Yeah. It's got to be
oh,
much more. So
mhm.
Matt, are you able to speak to just like a general, like what is the process like for a patient? Like just as far as, I mean, first of all, the feedback I get from you, from the folks who come into Immunoscene is that just the care, the team approach and the team care and the patient experience and the workflow. I know that sounds like that shouldn't matter, but as someone who's been through this myself and watched thousands and thousands of patients go through this, the thing that can be the most difficult of the cancer process is just dealing with bullshit. I guess there's no nice way to say, but like really bad customer care,
I think
really
that's
bad
yeah.
workflow, really bad communication, really balls dropped. That is really when you're literally fighting for your life. That's the last thing you want to be worrying about. And so I know that sounds like it shouldn't make a difference, but it really does. And you guys have done this well. But beyond that front desk experience and the patient workflow experience, what happens next? How do you make or create this vaccine? If you can speak to that at a high level, that'd be great. So people understand what this is. It's not like you're giving a
Yeah.
pill or it's explain what's going
Yeah.
on.
Yeah. No, it'd be much easier if it was just a pill, but unfortunately,
Right. Yeah.
not. And this is one of the reasons, big pharma does shy away from this. It does work, but it's not ever going to be
Easy.
uh,
Yeah.
easy.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's a couple of questions in there, but I'll address them for sure. So, I'm a scientist, right? I have a PhD. I used to be in the lab doing research. I'm not a medical doctor dealing with patients. And as I've jumped into this, and I've talked to more and more cancer patients, predominantly in either the United States or Canada, I have learned some interesting things about how healthcare is practiced. And I want to be careful. Obviously, what I'm about to say is not true of every doctor or every oncologist or every practice. There are absolutely very thoughtful and invested groups and people out there. But generally speaking, I don't think I was. Many of our patients, after they come through our program, will tell me, and by many, I mean, 98%, really all of them will tell me this is such a different experience. And I'll say, well, how so? And they will say, even just from the beginning. I mean, when I call you guys and want information, you give me 45 minutes to an hour and a half, answer all my questions. You're very transparent. You're very thoughtful. Everywhere else I call, maybe I get a 5 for 10 minute, whatever. You guys respond to all my emails. You're constantly just from the get. This is from people that aren't our patients yet. These are from potential prospects who've paid us nothing. We will talk to you. We will answer all questions about what we're doing, much like we're doing right now, so that you understand and can make a thoughtful, educated decision. Apparently, very often at home, they'll say, it takes me 4 days, 8 days to get response to an email. And when I try to talk to my doctor, I get 10 minutes, and then I'm shuffled around to admin. And it's just very hard for my doctor really has to look at my chart to even understand, or remember what my case is. It's just hard to be able to have that kind of, there's no real relationship. I'm a patient. It's just a doctor-patient relationship in the most statistical sense. And it's just not what we do. Our doctors, we don't, maybe this is not great, but we don't have very much admin. It's our doctors. It's our we provide you with that doctor, that quality time. You can ask all your questions. We will answer them, good or bad. We will give you an answer. We will, if you're
And
unsure. Yeah.
on that note, I want to point out something that's very interesting is I have referred a lot of folks into you guys. By the way, I want people to understand, like, there's no exchange here, right? Outside of like, I need a patient to have some good resources. And you've had to turn people away
Yes.
because you're not like, just bring them all, everyone's welcome. And we'll come to that in the next question. But I just wanted like the integrity here of you saying, we're going to spend the time with you. We're going to see if you are a fit for this opportunity and if we're a fit for you. And you're very clear if it's not, you're not, the transparency is really beautiful in that there's disappointment, obviously, when a patient's hopeful that this is going to be a fit, but it's also refreshing when you guys aren't just like, this is a one size fits all, everyone welcome. So please carry on.
Yeah, no, in many ways, it's a horrible business model. We turn down a lot of applicants, and I don't say that trivially. I mean, I do understand. It actually is a very heavy decision because these are people's lives. Many of them want the treatment at all costs. They want to go through this. We do a full medical review. We don't charge anyone for that, but we're going to look. We can talk about this next, but we want to see if this is going to be safe and this is going to be effective. And obviously, it's all with a good faith understanding because no one can predict the future. But absolutely, we are not a one size fits all. We are not right for everyone. And if we honestly cannot look you in the face and say, we think this is a good shot for you, we will not take your time or your money. We just can't do it.
Thank you for that.
But provided we get through the medical review and you are approved, and we then have a call with you and go over you're approved, and here's
Yeah.
have we'll then work on, provided you want to proceed, and you can sign the informed consent, you continue to want to do this, we will build a schedule. And that schedule, just to be real brief, but it's about 6 weeks, and it's not inclusive. You don't have to be with us in Cancun for 6 weeks, but it takes about 6 weeks all told. We'll try and get you to Cancun as soon as possible. Admittedly, sometimes slots are getting full, and we are rapidly growing and adding to our abilities, but we will try and get you down within a month. And when you come to Cancun, week 1 is going to be a baseline week where we're going to do baseline scans, baseline blood draw, a baseline review, again, to make sure everything looks safe and copacetic. We're going to do, most likely will be a biopsy within that week. As I was saying before,
you need fresh tissue for this. You need
right.
That's a must.
That's
so you
a must.
Have something biopsiable, and it can't be blood. It's got to be tissue.
Correct. We need to double load your dendritic cells with the target information. And so we need that. And yes, things that have been unfortunately somewhat destroyed or degraded by paraffin or et cetera for pathology scoring, we can no longer use. We need fresh or cryopreserved tissue that we can extract good, solid genetic information as well as make a protein library from, because we're going to have to double load and activate that pathway. So that's usually in week 1. That's one of the only things we do in the procedure room of one of the 3 full-service private hospitals. We're going to be cautious. It is a biopsy, but it is typically outpatient. This is usually not major surgery. And then we'll mobilize your white blood cell count for that week, followed by an apheresis, just a large blood draw, because that's where we're going to get your immune cells from. Week 2, we're now in the lab. To be clear, our lab is an ISO 7 certified positive pressure cleanroom lab that is certified by the Mexican COFEPRIS, which is the Mexican FDA, and is actually one of there's only 11, I think there's only 11 labs in Mexico that are as certified as the lab we use. And so we're working in the lab. Our molecular biologists, our scientists are now making your dendritic cells, making the correct cancer, extracting the correct information. And at the end of that week, we now load your dendritic cells with this patented method that is unique to us. And this is just, again, it is, to be clear, no one else does this.
Right.
I don't care what they say. They do not do this. They certainly don't do it correctly. And if you look carefully, some of the things these other groups brag about are not braggable. You shouldn't brag about, we only do one shot. That's not very good. That's not how the immune system works.
You need to educate and titrate up the immune system. Yeah.
Yeah, it's some of the things I see where they're bragging, like, why are they bragging? That's not a good thing. But anyway, you get your first treatment now around day 14 from the beginning, and that'll actually come with a previous day where you meet with the oncologist. We do more blood work. We make sure everything looks appropriate. You will then get the treatment. Importantly, those dendritic cells are introduced near draining lymph nodes. Dendritic cells do not traffic well from an IV infusion or from an intradermal injection. And we know that. We've known that for years. Anyone doing that is ignoring it.
Yeah.
And we do ultrasound guided injections near functional lymph nodes. And essentially after that point, your immune system is going to ramp up for about a 2-week period. And so at that point, you can go home. You don't have to stay there. Your immune system will ramp up in you, whether you're on the beach in Cancun or you're at home with your cat. And then we essentially repeat the process at the end of week 4 and at the end of week 6 to really boost that immune response and push it towards durable memory. And so that's kind of our core process of getting your immune system educated in the game, seeing what it needs to see and doing its job.
And now basically creating an ability for your body to fight the cancer itself.
Yes. I mean, everyone wants complete remission, of course, but you can't even get partial remission if you're not doing the right thing in the first place. Exactly. I mean, you have to start with, you have to start. Your immune system is twiddling its thumbs. Get it going. Right. And then we have good opportunities.
Yeah. Dr. Halpert, who is contraindicated for this? What keeps people from being a good candidate for this therapy?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So some of it is just very, black and white, very obvious. At this time, we're not treating blood cancers because we have not done the research validation that says we can isolate the cancer cells out of your blood in a way that we can then load your dendritic cells. So we do need you as the patient to have a solid tumorous mass.
Yeah.
It needs to be safely accessible. If your own doctors won't touch it with a 10-foot pole because there's a critical artery running through it and this could be dangerous. Right. We probably aren't going to either. So it needs to be somewhat safe. And I mean, it's unfortunate. We have some prospects who they have a 0.5 centimeter mass, and honestly, it's too small, where we are not completely confident, or as confident as we need to be, that we're going to get a good dense tumor tissue sample. And so we do typically need patients to have lesions that are at least 2 centimeters in diameter. There's a margin, but we're trying to get a pencil eraser amount of dense tumor tissue. That's the question. Can we safely get that? We're not treating patients with brain lesions at this time. Not that it can't work. In fact, as you know, one of our clinical trials has worked very well in brain cancer. It's just within Cancun, we don't yet have the medical supervision for dealing with the brain. Yeah. You need to have an immune system. I mean,
so basically that's what I was going to say next is patients who've been so heavily pre-treated who now basically do not have a functioning immune system are not a good candidate for this. This is the danger right here, Dr. Halpert, is there's so many, or the frustration, not danger, are how many patients are so overly treated that we've nothing left to work with at the end of the day.
Yes.
I want you to be coming in earlier in the game versus last resort.
Yes. I mean, I'll pause this answer to answer or address that. And that is, people will ask us, do you only take stage 4 cancer patients? And no, I mean, that's not, look, if it's stage 4, we have to all have our eyes open. It's going to be very difficult at this point. I mean, technically speaking, stage 4 cancer is not considered curable. When you reach that point, it's typically, how can we buy time? How can we put you in a temporary remission? Is there palliative care? We have seen far better statistics than that, but it's coming to us at the very end when you're completely beaten up and you're looking at weeks left to live. This is not magic. This is not some snap of the fingers and you walk out. We do not possess that that ability. It is much better if you can come and do this earlier in the game. And as you know, and as might make common sense with the fact that all we're doing is biologically fixing you with your own biology, we are not removing any treatment options from your plate. If you still want to do standard of care, be it chemotherapy or radiation, you absolutely can. If you still want to look at future clinical trials, you absolutely can. If you still want to look at integrative or holistic approaches, you absolutely can. This affects you in a sense as much as if you had the flu, right? If you had the flu, would you still be eligible for chemo? Of course, that isn't going to change that. But getting your immune system activated and fighting and surveying your whole body and doing its job earlier on in the process is going to help prevent metastases. It's going to help confine the cancer. It may even eliminate the cancer if the immune system is still strong enough, rather than let's wait until you've done 19 rounds of chemo, you barely have a sputtering immune system left, and now we're going to try. It's like that dusty lawnmower in the garage that you haven't turned on for 5 years and now you're trying to get it going. It's not impossible, but it is obviously much trickier at that point.
Interesting. And so, my gosh, you guys are bringing so much innovation to this space. It's really exciting to see. I want to know, in closing, what are you at Immunoscene most excited about on the horizon within your own center and maybe in the world at large? Because this is a very beautifully evolving field right now.
No, yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I'll answer kind of both questions within our own paradigm. I mean, as you know, and we haven't actually explicitly, discussed this, but Immunoscene is offering this dendritic cell treatment in Cancun, basically via compassionate use to good candidates, right? To people that, if you have, it is sad to say, but I mean, if you have 2 weeks left to live, this is not for you. We don't want to take your time or your money. You need to have some time, some fight left, some ability to actually do this. But we are not this science.
Right.
I mean, you hear me talk about how phenomenal it is, and you're, a listener right now might be saying, if it's so phenomenal, why is this only in Cancun? And the answer is, it's not. We are doing clinical trials. This science is in a variety of trials throughout the US that, of course, are sanctioned by the FDA. And because it's not target specific, we can go after many cancers. We can go after glioblastoma, a very aggressive brain cancer. We can go after a pancreatic ductal adenocarcinoma, a form of pancreatic cancer. We can go after angiosarcoma. We can go after refractory melanoma and triple negative breast. And many of and these are at various stages, right? PDAC is open right now. You can get this. If you have PDAC, please inquire. We will send you to Baylor College of Medicine, and hopefully you can get in the trial there. If you have angiosarcoma, we will refer you to our site at MD Anderson, where you can hopefully get the treatment there. And if you have glioblastoma, that trial actually has wrapped up. I can tell you we had no attributable severe adverse events, and the clinical outcomes have been impressive enough that the FDA did grant this a fast track designation. They looked at it and they said, this needs to move faster. They are currently reviewing this for a potential accelerated approval for us to move faster. And also based on those results, we did win a breakthrough in cancer award, which will actually help fund even more clinical work. This science is making its way through clinical trials. And to help overcome the stigma that dendritic cells cannot work, we, the scientists, the business people, hate us for this. They really do. It is not the easiest business model, but we said, well, what are the toughest cancers we can move the needle in? Glioblastoma, pancreatic. If we can use dendritic cells to move the needle there and show improvement, knowing that, this will evolve, this will get better, what cancer do you think it couldn't be effective in? And that's the whole point. This science is almost cancer agnostic. So it should be part of all treatment modalities. Again, it can work with standard of care. It can. We're not saying you have to take that even away if you want it, but add this at the time of your surgery where some tissue is being removed, get this vaccine made, get your body in the game correctly. All results will be improved. Whatever they would have been before, the odds are now better. So we open this in Immunoscene so that we can have the legal and ethical abilities to offer this to patients that are not eligible for one of our clinical trials. We feel that that's important because as important as trials and statistics are, this is just biology. That's not going to change. And not everyone can wait 10, 15 years for this process to bear out. And so I'm excited because it's still going to take time. But when we show this is truly effective in more than one cancer, light bulbs will start to go off that this really should be just a part of a baseline treatment of all, really all, most or all cancers, right? The immune system doesn't really care if
Yeah,
your cancer started in the pancreas or your
exactly.
prostate or your neck. Your immune system is protecting all
It's,
of
your
that.
immune system is an ecosystem, and that tumor happens to live in that ecosystem, and you can engage it from the ecosystem. So I think that's what's so beautiful about this and so elegant about this, very terrain centric about this. And so, Dr. Halpert, what like parting words would you offer to this community? Because what I feel you're doing is you're offering kind of a hope chest here of some other options and opportunities on current and on the horizon. Any parting words?
Oh, I could have so many parting words.
First of all,
But
you guys call them and talk more. There's so many more details here, but I wanted to give you a teaser, a taste of what they're up to over there. But yeah, Dr. Matt, tell us, leave us
yeah,
with some wisdom.
I will say this because a lot of a lot of cancer patients don't know this and they need to know this. Again, we're not here to bash standard of care. There are many times where chemotherapy or radiation or hormone therapy or target therapy are appropriate. There are times where we as a team will tell a candidate, we actually think your cancer's too aggressive right now for this treatment, and you would be better served getting it under control with something harsher. So I want to be clear about that. But when you go to any of these esteemed institutions, MD Anderson, Johns Hopkins, Sloan Kettering, Harvard, they're great, but they are in a sense bound to offering you standard of care. They're almost going to look at a list. This is your cancer. And based on group metrics of previous studies, this is the treatment protocol. And I'm not even going to get into how disgusting it is that often those are dictated by insurance companies.
Absolutely.
That's a different discussion. And that's what they're going to offer you, right? And even if they're at the point where all they can offer is palliative care to buy time, that is what they're going to offer you. They will not put it's a liability. They simply are not going to deviate from that. Most will not. Because if they do and it goes wrong, they could get in trouble. But you as the cancer patient, as scared as many are, sometimes will hear that and will think there's no hope. They will think there is nothing left for me to do. My oncologist has said, this is a tough cancer. And with what we know, chances are slim. And I think it's important to know that as immunotherapy has taken more center stage, as there have been more scientists such as yourself with what you study, with what we study. I mean, you know as well as anybody the data we collect and use to orchestrate our ongoing program and how we do this. There are actually other, I'm going to call it validated avenues out there. A lot of people will think it's either your mainstream doctor, like your oncologist, or snake oil salesmen who are just trying to take advantage of you. And make no mistake, they're out there.
Absolutely.
But there actually are a growing population of doctors and scientists who look into the science, who look into the personalized aspect of a patient's cancer and say, you know what? There are actually some options here, and it may not be mainstream yet, it may not be FDA approved yet, but that doesn't mean it won't work.
Yeah.
And so I definitely want to give these people, as a parting word, some degree of optimism and hope that you do need to find the right groups. And I'm sure you, as part of the whole summit and your program, can direct patients either within your own program or affiliate programs, people that you know are doing this correctly. And there are options. There are things that can be done. And you and I have both seen patients hit a no evidence of disease mark that were previously told you have absolutely no shot. And so after that emotional draining of the emotional toil of dealing with your cancer and potentially being told how bad it is, get yourself up, fight, and there are tools for you to fight for your life here. There are tools to get you back to health. And so I think what you guys are doing with this summit and the continued efforts you yourself, Dr. Winters, make to get the word out to these people about there are other options, there are other things we can do, it's not just good, it's necessary. And so I just personally thank you for that, because it's made it possible for me and our group to do things like this as well.
So good. Well, it takes a village, doesn't it? So I appreciate you being part of it. And like I said, innovating and offering hope and offering innovation in such a huge way. It's mind blowing. So thank you so much for your very valuable time today, Dr. Halpert. And I'm looking forward to folks knowing you and following up with you soon. All the best.
Absolutely. Thank you.